have the word of the most trusted institution on earth, the Catholic Church.
Renfield is one of those movies that you watch it and you go, why are there not more movies like this out there? And so it's kind of a microcosm of all of Universal's film slate that we have going this year, where there's plenty of originality. While this might be a sequel to Dracula, but it's still an original story based in that sort of Dracula universe that we've got going on here, and it features a career best performance by Nicolas Cage. It is one that you do not want to miss. Dracula is directed by Chris McKay, who you might know from the Lego movie or the Lego Batman movie or some other movies out there. His directing style is very frenetic, very fast-paced. It was written by Ryan Ridley based on a story by Robert Kirkman of The Walking Dead, so there's plenty of horror and sort of action royalty in this creative team that's going on for Renfield. It stars Nicholas Hoult as Renfield, it stars Nicolas Cage as Dracula, it stars Awkwafina as Rebecca, the cop that sort of helps Renfield throughout the film. It also stars Ben Schwartz as Teddy Lobo, the sub-villain of the film, and then it features cameos from Caroline Williams of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 fame, and it also features a cameo from Jenna Cannell from the first Terrifier movie. There's plenty of action, there's plenty to look at in Renfield. It's quite gory as well. There's plenty of scenes where people are getting their arms ripped off and stabbed with and beaten with, and somebody, you can see in the trailer, somebody gets their arms cut off with a dinner plate. There's plenty of violence. Dracula is sort of fearsome and brutal, but you know, Nicolas Cage doesn't go sort of into that. It's an old school vampire feel. He's not like one of these super powered vampires that we have from like Twilight or whatever, you know. His words have more power than his actions because, well, he is the Lord of Darkness. He's Dracula. He's the vampire of all vampires, so you don't want to mess with him. We'll just go through that performance by Nicolas Cage, and I know he's an Oscar-nominated actor and an Oscar winner and all of that, and there's been plenty of great Nicolas Cage performances throughout the years, but this one in particular for Nicolas Cage is a career best from just everything that goes into it. This is a dream role to get Nicolas Cage playing Dracula. In particular, a lot of the scenes where they do a classic sort of old school Dracula nod in the film, and it is just as special as you would think it is. It is amazing to look at. It's awesomely shot. It captures all of the elements of the classic Dracula, classic Universal horror that are lacking in horror these days. And while this doesn't end up like a classic Universal horror movie, it does capture sort of this classic feel. It feels a lot like Fright Night. It feels a lot like The Lost Boys almost, in that tone and that feel of the film. That old school feel comes through in Nicolas Cage's performance. He is hilarious. There's a scene where the whole theater, including myself, was dying laughing. People couldn't keep their laughter in with his performance. And it's not just something where he's saying, you know, naughty things as Dracula or whatever. It's the facial expressions and the timing of everything that he gives. There's one, like, when you see the scene, you're gonna know it because it's hilarious and you will laugh your ass off at it. And Nicholas Hoult plays off of him so well. He plays this character that feels very sort of heroic in one way, but also just completely just subject to Dracula's will, very just pathetic. That's the word I'm thinking of. It's pathetic. He's pathetic in the film. As for the weakest parts of the film, the script, when it strays away from the whole, you know, Renfield Dracula sort of experience, it does feel a little bit lacking. It does. Rebecca's arc in the movie, it feels tacked on. It feels like it's there just because they needed her to be sort of badass and a cop, and not just. The whole focus should be on Renfield and Nick and Dracula, but her arc in particular is just very weak. It's just very tacked on, and it just doesn't feel important in the film in the grand scheme of things. Like, she's there, and her sister gets captured, and her sister getting captured is just necessitating them getting back to Dracula, and it just doesn't really work. That's not to say that Awkwafina isn't great. It's just the character work that she's given doesn't fit her as an actress very well. She's doing like super badass things, and Awkwafina is more of a comedic actor, and it doesn't really fit with everything. It's like taking a square hole and putting a circle peg in it or something like that. It just doesn't work. On the other hand, the sub-villains of the film, the Lobo, drug family, crime, whatever, Ben Schwartz plays the, you know, sort of dummy son of the crime lord, and he's great. He is fantastic. He's not as annoying as you would think he would if you've seen Parks and Rec as John Ralphio. I love John Ralphio, but he's annoying, obviously. But Ben Schwartz is great here, especially when he goes toe-to-toe with Renfield for sort of that affection of Dracula. The rest of the cast surrounding it is also great. The people in this focus group, especially the leader of the focus group, are just, hilarious, but in an unintentional way that doesn't feel like they're like, playing it up. It just, they're doing their performance, and the words that were written for them were hilarious, and so they add to it. The film itself, it's only about an hour and a half long, so it's really quick. You're in, you're out, you're done. It felt like it didn't need any more added to it, but the whole subplot, like I said before, with the cop and with Rebecca and her family, it just feels a little tacked on, so I guess they had to add that on for runtime purposes or for script length purposes or whatever. But it does feel like a very tight film, and Chris McKay's direction and the cinematography and everything, at certain points it's a very beautifully shot film, especially with a lot of the colors and stuff that's on Dracula's face. There's a scene where he's talking and there's colors changing on his face, very nice. The set direction, or the set decoration and everything like that, also looks great. The locales, it's set in New Orleans and it was filmed in Louisiana, so you get that whole Louisiana sort of vibe to it. And it doesn't go through like very many sort of famous Louisiana locations. There's some stock footage and B-roll. There's no set pieces set throughout those famous locales in New Orleans. You don't go through, the Mardi Gras stuff. It's just kind of, the location is a location, but it feels very Dracula-ish, the city that they chose. Film, for those people thinking, oh, this might not be that scary, it's more of action than comedy, it does have a lot of good horror elements to it. There are some scenes that are quite startling for people that don't like gore, or, it's that whole age-old discussion about horror movies. So, well, I don't find this horror movie scary, so it's not a horror movie. Well, shut up, it is, because it's the genre that it's in. You can watch Nightmare on Elm Street 50 times and won't be scared by it by the end of it, but it'll still be a horror movie. Renfield, you might not be super scared by it, but it's definitely a horror movie. It's definitely got gore, it's got monsters, it's got vampires and stuff like that. And so, for the horror hounds out there, you'll love this one. This movie, it just feels fun. It feels like a movie that we need. We need more vampire movies. We had this renaissance in the 80s and 90s. We had The Lost Boys, we had, Near Dark, we had everything. We had Fright Night, and then we had John Carpenter's vampires in the 90s, and then we had Blade and everything. We haven't had a good vampire movie in a long time that has been this much fun. We've had others throughout the 2000s and 2010s. You can say that you like Twilight or whatever, I guess, but I don't. But it's just a fun movie that we need more of, because in a world where people have superhero fatigue, or they're, big box office budget blowouts or whatever that they don't want to see anymore, Renfield fits in that sort of middle ground where it's not an ultra low budget, it's not an ultra high budget. It just fits. It's a movie that's fun, that's entertaining, that features Nicolas Cage as Dracula. So that's the reason to go see it, is to see Nicolas Cage as Dracula. Everything surrounding it fits in very well and makes it so that works. But at the end of the day, you're going to go see Renfield to see Nicolas Cage as Dracula. If I'm going to give it a rating, I'm going to give it a 90 out of 100. That's a recommendation from me. Go check it out. Releases in theaters on April 14th. That's this Friday, if you're watching this before the release date. And go check it out. And if you want to check out more horror content, make sure you look at this playlist, because it's got all of my horror videos and you can go through all of them.